Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on the Go Get It podcast with Rob Butler. For today's episode, we're going to be joined by Gary Kalaci, the president of Alexa Translation. Gary identified from a very early age that there was going to be a huge growth opportunity in the translation space. He's been able to build a very prominent business that works with some of the bigger corporations across the globe to translate their materials. I want to hear that story and I want to be able to share it with you. So stick around and let's go get it.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Here we go. Rock and roll. Go Get It podcast. Gary Kalaci. He's joining me, CEO of Alexa Translation. And I see your logo coming across my real life email all the time now. And I think it's amazing. And you're going to run us through how you ended up where you are. We're going to share a little bit about where we first remember meeting. And your version may be different than mine, and I'm hoping that it is, which is always fun. And then we're going to run through the three most important things that you'd recommend somebody coming out of school or somebody that's halfway through their career and they want to switch things up, just to spark or ignite a little interest and set them in a different direction. So as an entrepreneur and a very successful business person, Gary, I'm happy to have you on the podcast.
Rob, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me, and I was looking forward to it. What better way than to converse with old friends? I don't mean old age-wise. I mean friends I've known for a long time.
Yeah. Not to say they're one and the same, but they may be similar. But that's okay. That's the premise behind everything we've been doing, where it's really looking back across the number of people you've connected with over the last 10, 15, 30 years and watching them build their careers and go on to do really interesting and unique and successful things. It's fun to be able to connect, just to pick everybody's brain to see what's allowing them to get to where they've gotten to and what makes them tick. So, no, really fun so far. So thank you for making the time for us today. I'm going to get right into it. What might be your first memory of our introduction? And it could be very faint. It does not matter. I just want to compare notes to see if we're on the same page.
If I recall correctly, it was during the MBA orientation at the University of Windsor Odette School of Business. It may have been us doing a scavenger hunt that was organized by the MBA Society.
Do you know what's crazy? That scavenger hunt, I had no recollection of it until right this second. And I literally remember being right beside what I think would have been the St. Clair River, trying to solve some project or puzzle. And none of us knew one another. And I'm just shaking my head like, I honestly have no idea how we're going to get to the end of this thing. And lo and behold, we clearly did. But I don't, it's so funny. I had no recollection that we'd even done that. But yes, that's absolutely correct. And the funny thing is you're going to have to help me out because my first thought has to do with some Latin dancing. Like, is that possible?
It is.
Like first week of school, maybe we had some welcome event or party and you might have brought out the Latin vibes for everybody.
No, your memory has not failed you. So Barbara at the time that was doing essentially the alumni engagement and the fundraising on behalf of the School of Business said, we're going to get the MBAs to participate. I think it was like the Dean's Ball or like the MBA semi-formal, whatever we called it, but it was essentially early on in our semester. And we were set up and a few of us participated in doing a waltz and some Latin dancing. So we were practicing in that atrium at the School of Business before we were live around how to do our waltzing around at the gala. So
I think you were trying to teach a lot of the students that had come there without a background in dance whatsoever, what they, in theory, should be able to do at some level in a group setting. Do you remember? How did you choose your partner for that type of dance?
I think Barbara was helping us at the time. Being like, all right, do you go with this person? Go. I don't think we had too much choice. It was more just casual. Let's pair you up. Let's go.
Cross your fingers. Follow my lead.
I actually ended up dancing with Barbara, if I recall correctly, and then I think the rest of the students had student counterparts. So
That's funny. And Barbara, I do remember now. Yeah, good energy. That's funny. Those are two good stories. Thanks for
100%.
reminding me that I lived through both of them. So amazing. Okay, so Alexa translation. We were just going back to our university era, which would have been 25, 30 years ago, which sounds insane. But that being said, fast forward to today, you're running a very successful company across multiple countries. Can you just bring the viewer, for those that aren't as familiar with the business, up to speed on what that looks like and what you're doing today?
I was in undergrad, started working as a court interpreter. So this was interpreting at the time for the Ministry of the Attorney General, and then sort of Immigration Canada and a few other organizations. And then the idea came about that, hey, I could actually turn this into a business, which could be a business that I run on the side while in university. I never thought I'd be doing this for a living. As time went on, and I must actually say that the MBA, I did a low-end MBA program, but the MBA portion of the program really encouraged me to do some entrepreneurial. I remember our classes with Professor Kerr, Jerry Kerr, Rob, that you may recall. We did new venture formation and strategy with him, and both of them, you're talking about how, especially new venture formations, how companies that, as we know them today, turned into what they were, like the FedExes of the world, etc. And I said, maybe I should be doing this business side of things. And I was actually contemplating not even an article and going straight into this. A mentor of mine at the time said, go and article, get called to the bar, and then you can pursue the business. At least you can say you're a lawyer, and you also have a backup plan that you can always be a lawyer. So I did that. I went an article, but didn't change my mind that I was actually going to focus on the business. And started what it was, a professional services translation firm, where we do a lot of legal financial translations with professionals. And in 2018, acquired an AI machine translation company. And our hypothesis at the time was that AI is going to play a bigger role in our lives. So now the business has two divisions, the professional services division, as well as the AI SaaS division, where organizations license our software to do translations themselves. They train it for their particular enterprise and really speaks their language very effectively.
So you remind me of Dr. Kerr. So if I think about when you're looking through different opportunities and creating an opportunity to maybe service, I don't know if you were thinking as big a scale as you've now become, like maybe it was smaller, and you can kind of talk to that as well, like a smaller focus out of the gate. But do you think it was across your MBA opportunities, law school, your language and being able to converse in Spanish, I would assume, and then English? Did any one of those influence that decision more than the other?
So certainly being able to be a court interpreter was what provided the affinity to go into the translation business and the languages business. I think deciding to focus on business versus law was very much the MBA portion of it. With one of our common colleagues from the MBA program, Michael Kay, we were actually working on a technology platform at the same time. So I sort of made up my mind that I want to focus on some entrepreneurial. It didn't have to be the translation business, but in chatting with a very successful entrepreneur out of New York that Mike and I took to the tennis game there, to the US Open. He said, do what you know, focus on what you know, and then pursue something entrepreneurial. So that's when the idea was, well, I've been doing translation for a while, so this is really what we know. So I'm like, Mike, we should go and do translation as opposed to a tech platform that we may not be as self-sufficient with.
And then that one connection with Michael, were there other people throughout your educational career that you teamed up with at any point or used as a sounding board to guide you along the way?
Very much so. So I think there were many people that I chatted with along the way to say, should it be something entrepreneurial? Should it be something that is a bit more, or should it be more law focused? And a lot of the recommendations that came at the time, and I actually spent a fair bit of time even chatting with Professor Kerr, Rob, that at the time the idea was Dr. Francine Schlosser as well. You'll remember her. She was also one of our professors. At the time, I was picking their brains saying, should this be it? And then a lot of potential clients as well, where I was saying, hey, should I be doing this? Is there enough opportunity, etc. So it's never, what I found was pursuing anything entrepreneurial, the more conversations you have with people that have exposure to aspects of that business or to business in general, there are things you learn and that can contribute to forming your thoughts and your approach.
And then we were in Windsor during school, but were you raised in that part of Ontario or Canada? Like, does that have anything to do with it in terms of the network you were able to build?
So I moved to Canada. I moved to Windsor from Albania in 2000. I've been in Canada since 2000. It'll be 25 years since September. And from 2000 to 2010, I spent those first 10 years in Windsor and did sort of all the university there. Windsor, being a very multicultural city, certainly contributed to this. For a relatively small city, it actually had a very multicultural community, and
Right.
part of the proximity to the U.S. was certainly part of the rationale for it. But it was the networking in Windsor was very effective because, not being a huge city, you get to meet a lot of who's who pretty quickly and be able to navigate certain things much faster than you would in a place like Toronto, where it can take more time to achieve the same thing.
You were probably able to stand out as well. And I always think that a smaller footprint relative to a Toronto is, in this example, there's 30 of you doing or trying to do what you're doing there, where Windsor, there may be only 1 or 2 of you. And for that reason, you just have the ability to stand out if you're really strong in any one particular area.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
You think about the bigger decisions you made along the way. In no particular order, what would be the first thing you'd recommend somebody who's exploring, not necessarily in the translation space, but just entrepreneurism in general or in a broad sense? What would you recommend they think about in their decision-making process?
So a few things. One is do what you know. And this was something that I was told, which means if you're going to pursue something entrepreneurial, you should focus on an area that you are familiar with. And if you're not particularly familiar or you have an idea, you want to familiarize yourself really quickly, become as proficient as possible within that area as quickly as you can, because it'll increase your chances for success. If I had an idea right now about a dating website, what do I know about a dating website, right? So I would have to do a ton of research. I may have entrepreneurial skills, but not necessarily anything about that particular area. So that would be something that I would have to do a fair bit of research in. So do what you know is a really important thing, and something that you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about something, it can really help. So I always enjoyed languages, interacting. So do what you know and what you're passionate about is something extremely critical.
And the do what you know, that's the tip that you were given from a tennis tournament in New York. Is that right?
He was one of the, and he was his name is Ben Lehrer, and he is the founder of Thrillist, at the time, much bigger organization now, because they do VC, VC work, etc. But he said, do what you know. And I had heard that advice from others, but it really resonated in that context.
So do what you know and be passionate about it. So that's number one. Number two, what comes to mind?
Now is better than perfect. So it's that once you've done enough research, etc., at one point you need to start just launching something, getting out there and start doing it, and iterate consistently. Like essentially, you have to consistently work hard at it and iterate. But I hear people sometimes say, I'm going to work at this job for a bunch more years, save a bit more money, and then I'm going to do something entrepreneurial. And really what I say is, like, there's never a perfect time, and in some way it's like having kids. No matter when you have them, it's going to be disruptive to your life. It's going to change how you live, and etc. And entrepreneurship is the same way. Like, it's whenever you do it, it's going to change your life and disrupt it substantially. But it is, the sooner you start, the better it is, because you are, once you've formed an idea or something you want to focus on, of course, not just, I'm going to quit my job because I want to do something entrepreneurial without any thought about it. But once you've thought an idea, don't overthink it, go do it, because as time goes on, it doesn't necessarily get easier.
Now, I feel like we'd ask this question across the class at school, but are entrepreneurials built or born?
I think I've seen all of it, Rob, the full spectrum. People that come across very much like organic and natural at it. And there are people that are, you'd never think of them as entrepreneur. They would be crazy subject area specialists. They're really good at this one thing, very technical people. But they turn it into a business by surrounding their own limitations with skill sets that other people bring to the table and rocket do really, really well in a way that you couldn't just on your own. And the rationale is because it's very much built. It doesn't have to be born. Born just means you have certain skills that make you more natural at it, but that's all it is.
It's trickier in my not being an entrepreneur. I'm curious, as you decide to move into that direction, you know how they always talk about putting people around you that are really talented and the culture. Like, what if you're the only person? What if there is no culture other than you? Certainly in the earlier days, like it is you. How do you approach that, or how am I to think about that versus more of a team aspect that you maybe don't have the luxury of building out for a decade?
So I think, Rob, this would have been my third suggestion as we were actually sort of going down that road, which is you have to be prepared to work really, really hard and really dedicate yourself to the craft and to rolling up your sleeves and doing all kinds of different things, experimenting, learning new skills, adapting quickly. It's that you are in the early days, you are a bit of chief cook and bottle washer because you're not going to have a full management team from day one and, like the staff to go and direct, etc. You're doing some of these things and you're learning how to do it. But that also is what's going to ultimately make you an effective manager when you're ultimately managing people on some of those items is that you're like, I know what it was like being at the ground level because I had to do it in the early days and now I can actually give some directives. But I think there is no way around having to put in the hours and hard work. And you can work smart. It doesn't have to be hard. But having to learn some of these skills that although you will do a level of outsourcing and have some people help, you still have to do some of the prep work and learn how to keep those costs down in the early days.
And then you talk about the entrepreneurial skill set. I come back to in a bigger corporation, but I think it's just as applicable in the entrepreneurial type role, qualitative versus qualitative skill set. And I mean like the emotional IQ versus the academic piece. Does one win out versus another?
I think anyone can learn the academic pieces. The EQ piece is harder to learn. That's a bit more innate. I think having high EQ is really important, and it is something that you want to look for in hires. The good attitude, the go get it, and we have certain key criteria within Alexa translations when we hire, where you want this self-starter attitude where you're like, I'm going to I see an opportunity, let me go and do it. And this pursuit of perfection that you're iterating, that you're like, we have to consistently do that. And I find it just so critical to actually doing this effectively. So if you have the go get it attitude and you can interact with people well, show that you add value, show that you are a person that they can rely on and you actually get things done, etc. You understand their pain points and can adapt accordingly. That is far more valuable. Other things you can learn.
And then I always associate that with a bit of a sales and savviness skill set. And to your point, whether it's innate, a character trait, something that you develop over time, I think you can improve on all of those aspects, but there has to be something where your default mode feels, I think, this is my own opinion, feels very comfortable in that type of setting. I don't know that everybody's wired for it, but I think it is something that if you have relative comfort in front of a group of people that you don't know, that's always a great test. Can you carry your own? And then take that conversation, whatever it starts out as, and move the thing forward. That's how I visualize it in my head. And I think for those that are coming out of school, for sure, that is a really wonderful skill set that you shouldn't undersell or underestimate. And whether it's across different committees at school? Like when you were at school, did you join any different groups there? I know you talked about doing the translation piece, but anything else outside for extracurricular?
Yeah, I mean, I was very involved early on from what was the University of Windsor Student Alliance, like effectively the student council, to the Senate, to the Board of Governors. I was on the United Way Board, AIDS Committee of Windsor Board, president of the Science Society. So I was all over the place.
Dude, that's the most important part. Like, I think, especially to a younger audience, those are the extracurricular items that, sure, you can go sit on your couch if you want to. That's easier. But if you put yourself out of your comfort zone and have some level of motivation to test out some of these different groups, and the network you can build out along the way is just spectacular.
For sure. And I think that's a great piece of advice, Rob, when people are in school, but also after school, sort of, because you can get involved with not-for-profits and community organizations at any stage. But starting early on is helpful because you also develop a skill set about, like, how can I add value? Like, let me put in some time for a cause that isn't directly benefiting me. So, any of this not-for-profits, it's essentially you're going and helping, and it's a volunteer cause. And I get as a student, and, I had to have part-time jobs and had the business on the side. So you have to do the things that make you money. I mean, as you know, I had my eldest son when I was still in law school. So that really adds to some of the financial pressure that you have to plan for. But at the same time, like, that's the reality. And we often thought when we were in university, oh, look at how busy we are. You don't realize how little we were doing until you're like, have really lengthy days at work. So I tell students all the time, I'm like, think you're busy now, until you feel overwhelmed, you are not busy. So push yourself until you're overwhelmed. Nothing's going to prepare you better for real life.
It's just a warm up.
Well, that's just it. So all these student societies and organizations, etc., you learn skills, you build a network, you learn how to interact, add value, and in a way that is relatively safe, right? Like, it's there's far less at stake in those than when you're running your own business, where it can be much more existential from a making a living perspective.
So you look at Alexa Translation today, and it's already successful in its own right, and you look like you're in good shape and you're in a great mindset. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Is there an ultimate goal in mind, or is it just continue doing what you're doing?
No, I think one thing I've realized, Rob, is that I enjoy the entrepreneurial piece and sort of building organizations and scaling and doing so locally as well as globally. And I think sort of the path forward is much more entrepreneurship. So whether it's within this industry or adjacent industries, as you know, we do a fair bit with the legal financial space. You can only imagine what can be done with technology, where you augment the language capabilities with other sort of technologies that can augment it. So I see a lot more of that in our future, and much more multinationally.
I love it. Gary, we've hit the top of the hour. I appreciate you taking time for the Go Get It podcast. Any last questions for me?
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me on here. It's being introspective about this is key, because as you give other people advice, you have to say, what are some of the key things to take away? And I think you're doing some great work. I recommend every student and aspiring entrepreneur to listen to it.
Oh my God, that's just what I need. A good plug. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time and contributing to the Go Get It podcast. So thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Great to see you.
Likewise. Okay, we'll keep in touch. Take care.
Let's go!
Hey, this is Rob Butler on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening to what it is we can bring to your career evolution. And if you liked our guest, feel free to 1, follow us, and 2, put a question in the reel, and hopefully our interviewee can respond to that question directly. With that, I'd like to encourage you to join us on next week's edition on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks again.